So this is Bibles, Boots, and Baddies. Was initially going to name it Bible, Boots, and Babes, but something just didn't sit right with it. So the whole point of Bibles is obviously God's Word. It's a Christian podcast. Boots is the, trauma aspect of this, first responders, PTSD, veteran aspect. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, battle PTSD. I was told I would always have it. And then Baddies, I'm a felon, and when I was incarcerated, I met a lot of other women that would be considered baddies, and found out that there's just a whole lot more to their testimony and who they really are. I now do prison ministry, and it's one of the most amazing things I've ever done, going into the prisons every Friday, and it's just been a blessing. I wasn't always a Christian. I spent most of my life as an atheist, and during my incarceration and in my time on trial, I made a turn and met Christ, and now I love hearing other amazing stories of women and warriors for God that also made that turn. Some of the folks that you meet that spent most of their life in the trenches and then found Christ, I believe it's because they were being trained. And the devil doesn't rob an empty house. So a lot of the folks that lived in the trenches, found Christ, have some of the most moving, inspirational, crazy story. So today is our first episode, and we have our first guest, which is Miss Jennifer Longmire.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Longmire. I'm also third-time convicted felon. I spent 3.5 years in a New York State penitentiary. I turned my life over to Christ. I'm also in recovery. I've got 10 years clean from heroin. The last thing I tried was the first and only thing that worked, and that was surrendering my will to Jesus Christ.
So what does that mean, like, when you surrender?
Well, I had to step out of my own way. I had to step back and say, okay, I've been in the meetings, I've been to groups, I've been in and out of different facilities, penitentiaries, psychiatric units. I've been in the rooms, AA, NA. I've been Celebrate Recovery. I've been in all these groups, and I went through the steps and understanding what the steps meant. And I had to understand that there was a power greater than myself, and that I had to surrender my power to that power.
Yeah.
So I started searching.
Well, and it seems like before we know Christ, we search usually in all the wrong places: drugs, lustful relationships, wild thrills, gambling, spending.
Yes, other religions.
Yeah.
When I was in prison, I would go to like every single church. Every time I can get out of the pod, I would go to whatever event they were having. So I went to like the Catholic Church. I even took my Shahada to be a Muslim.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I went through that. I walked through that for a little bit, and nothing felt real. Nothing felt right. And I just kept searching and searching and searching.
And you had a similar mother that was kind of involved.
Yeah. I can't really recall exactly what she dabbled in. But I remember being in situations in California where I was young, 6, 7, 8 years old, where we, there would be like, I think it was like kind of like voodoo kind of stuff, because there was like sacrificing.
So was it like a shop?
It was a house. It was a scary house. It looked very scary. And there was a chicken, and the head got chopped off, and then all this, everybody was chanting, and then all of a sudden...
Sounds kind of witchy.
Yeah, definitely witchy.
Yeah.
And then something like flew through the house, and I didn't see it, but all the doors slammed shut, and it like scared me. It really, really scared me.
My biological mom, when I was younger, would bring us to these like witchcraft shops, and they would make voodoo dolls, and they, all these spells they thought they were doing. And there was probably a lot of the reason that they struggled so much and had such chaos in their life. Mm-hmm. What a different life I would have had if my parents who had raised me had found Christ.
Right.
And what a blessing it is to be able to put that into our children's life.
Yeah. My grandmother was, so my mom rebelled against her mom, my grandmother. And so my grandfather was an engineer. He designed the Brockway trucks, and they were very wealthy. They lived in like a mansion. They had like maids and they had butlers and they had all kinds of stuff.
Dude,
so
yes.
yeah, so it was crazy. So my mom had it all as a child, and my mom would tell me things like, living with your grandmother was like mommy dearest. You know, my grandmother was like a socialite. Like she was also a heavy drinker at the time. And when my mom didn't do things that were supposed to be done the way that my grandmother wanted them done, my mom would say that my grandmother would like whip her with a wire hanger and like just do horrible things to her. So when my mom turned 18, she moved out of the house and like completely rebelled against my grandparents. But when we were born, my grandmother changed. She changed, and she was very, very spiritual. She was Pentecostal, so that, you know, it kind of scared me because I was confused. So I would spend summers with my grandmother and weekends with my grandmother when we lived in California. And she would take us to church, and it was all about Jesus. And she would sing us songs like, he's got the whole world in his hands, and Jesus loves you, this I know. So I would get that with my grandmother. So I knew who Jesus was. I was introduced to him. But then I would go home, and my mom would say things like, your grandma's crazy. Like, she needs to be in a psychiatric unit. She's a hypocrite. She's this, she's that. Mm-hmm. So I was very, very confused with who Jesus was and how come Jesus is so good at my grandma's house, but where is he at my mom's house?
And I see that like in some experiences also where some of us, like when we're on church and we interact with somebody who, you know, claims to be Christian, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, and they hurt us in one way or another. Mm-hmm. And we're like, well, if that's a Christian, I don't want anything to do with them.
Yeah.
And I know earlier in my walk, like I would start to go to church and then somebody at the church, like another woman or something, would hurt my feelings. And I'd be like, this is why I don't go to church. Mm-hmm. But we have to remember that we don't go to church for the women or for the hypocrites, mm-hmm. Because a lot of us, we can all be that way, you know.
I learned that the church is just not the four walls. Like we are the body of Christ. We are the church. And we don't have to sit, you know, in the pews to be able to get to know who Jesus is. I did not find him in church.
No, I didn't.
I found him
I found him on a mountain.
I found him on my deathbed. Like literally.
Amen.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to know more about that. Like what did addiction look like? Some people have never been around it. Like, I mean, needles, like chaos. What's a trap house look like?
It was addiction was
like, what's a daily life? Like you wake up, do you go to work?
No, I didn't. I hustled all the time. I would scheme and scam and rob and lie and manipulate. And, you know, I'd learned how to, okay, so my parents were hippies, you know. Well, let me back up a little bit. My biological father committed suicide before I had the opportunity to know who he was. Know that. Yes, my biological father shot himself. And so I grew up with several stepdaddies, you know, and every stepdaddy abused me in every way that there is to be abused. Mental, physical, emotional, and sexual. So I had daddy issues. So, and I think that's a lot. Like the trauma from everything I've been through is kind of what led me down the path that I went down. So my mom met a man. She met him through a friend of hers who was in prison, and this man was her the friend's bunkie or whatever. So she started communicating with this guy, and then so he got out of prison, and we left California in 1983, and they were hippies, so they were all about peace, love, and smoke pot. So I started smoking pot when I was 9 years old with my parents, with my mom, and well, he wasn't my stepdad at the time because they didn't get married 2 years later, but he was also a locksmith. And he used to repossess vehicles and repossess things for the bank. And then he ended up using those skills to pick other things.
Oh, wow. Yeah. All right.
So we, you know, so my whole childhood was like on the run. Like the only time we lived in a stable environment was when it was school. And that wasn't always stable. So like I did not finish one grade of school in one school.
Yeah. So it was like on the road. You never know. Yep. You come home. Oh, we're packing our bags. We're getting in the car. We're going again.
Yep. I never knew where we were going to go. I never knew. Every weekend we were making money. We called it making money. We would travel. So he would pick locks on paper machines and video arcade games. So we would travel and we'd go to these big truck stops, and he would pick the locks on the arcade games, and he would robbing paper machines, robbing vending machines. He could walk up to
Paper machine like an ATM?
No, paper machine like your newspaper. Like your
Okay.
Like the standard, like I'm from Ithaca, New York, so it would be like the Ithaca Journal or it was,
so he's like quick. Like he probably just like walks up, makes it look like he's gonna play a game and and you're gone.
Yeah. So my mom and him and my sister and my brother, we would role play in these situations. So my mom would stand there with a newspaper. We'd be at a rest area or a rest stop. My mom would be holding the newspaper and somebody would walk by and she'd start a conversation like, oh, there should be 2 exits behind us. They like we were waiting on somebody.
Yeah.
So it was always just kind of knowing how to lie and how to tell a story.
So you learned a lot of skills on how to hustle through them. And then they started you on drugs at a young age, and it just seems like, of course, this would naturally happen.
Yeah, it was like a snowball effect. So I spent literally from the time I was 17 until the time I was 36 in the judicial system, like year after year after year after year, consecutively. Literally, there was not one break in there where I was not on probation, whether it be misdemeanor probation, felony probation, or parole.
How many times do you think you've been arrested?
Oh, I don't know.
Dozen?
More.
Oh.
Like literally more. Like my rap sheet would probably wrap around this house twice.
All right.
Yeah. It's crazy. And it's all kinds of stupid stuff. Most of it was all like self-inflicted things. Like I would write bad checks and I would get caught shoplifting and that kind of stuff. So a lot of what they call like petty larceny charges, petty charges, which then eventually led up to the bigger charges.
Something else happened in your childhood. Kind of chokes me up thinking about it. Your mother found somebody cheating and you had a little brother.
Yeah. So I was only about 6 months old, between 6 and 8 months old. And my mom had walked in on her boyfriend at the time. So this is a story that was retold to me. I heard my mom's side of the story, and then I heard Rick's side of the story about what had happened, and she said that he was having an affair, and she walked in and it was with her best friend, and she flipped out and he got he left. I don't know if he left on foot or left on bicycle or however motorcycle. But anyhow, he left and my mom chased him. And my 4-year-old brother, Christopher, was in the back seat. And Rick had apparently made the yellow light. And my mom blew through the red light and we were T-boned. And when we were T-boned, it spun us in circles. And the windows in the vehicle that we were in were rolled down. And my brother, Christopher, was thrown from the vehicle. And then... he was crushed by my mother's car, and he died.
Mm.
Yeah. My mother spent some time in a coma after that. She had all kinds of injuries. I was not hurt. I was not. There wasn't even a scratch on me. By the time my mom had come to, my grandmother had already made the arrangements for Christopher to be buried and all of that. So that's another thing that my mom hated my grandmother for, was for doing that.
Wow. So there's trauma. I mean, out the gate.
Right, yeah, right from, there are stories that I've heard, from Rick when my mom was pregnant with me, the things that she would do and the things that she would say. I don't know where my mom was mentally.
Yeah.
I don't know what had happened in her life or why things went the way they went.
Mental health is big for you. It's big for me.
Yes.
Because I realized that was the root of a lot of my traumas and a lot of the issues that I kept walking myself into, or, boundary issues. So you bring on mental health and you have a ton of credentials. So can you share some of the credentials you have?
So I'm a certified recovery peer specialist. I'm a licensed life coach in cognitive behavioral therapy and in emotional intelligence. I've done a lot of I've got credentials in modern applied psychology. I took a few courses and I got a certificate in neurolinguistics, which is LPC, neurolinguistics programming, which is just a way of communicating, understanding that only 7% of our words are communicated in language. Most of it's body language and our posture and how we respond and how we speak. I'm under supervision now for my LADAC, which is licensed to become a licensed drug and alcohol counselor.
That's awesome.
So I've got
and I know you've worked at a lot of very respectable places. West Care, you've worked at Bradford House. Like, these aren't,
Bradford Health, yeah.
Yeah. They have phenomenal reputation. And I know throughout East Tennessee, pretty much everybody knows who you are, it seems like. You've really seems to be like the face of recovery, that not only can you recover, but you can give back to the community in tremendous ways and connect with people that, you know, other people couldn't connect with. Like, it's really hard to be like, why don't you just get off drugs? Like, okay, hold on. There's more to that.
Yeah. You know, when I work with people, I don't ask them what's wrong with them. I don't ask them, you know, why do you do this? I ask them what's happened to you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you went through. Let's talk about that. Let's start there. And then I help them understand why they are the way they are. Like, when I started doing drugs, I never thought that I'd end up where I'd end up. I never thought that I'd dealt with DCS. I never thought that I'd lose custody of my youngest son.
But then you ended up
working
to help women get their children back, but get them on the right path.
Yep. So through West Care, when I was working at West Care, I was hired as a recovery coach, and then I stepped into another position as a family support specialist. And DCS contracted with West Care, and then I provided in-home treatment with families that were struggling with, they either lost their kids, at risk of losing their kids, or trying to get their kids back. So I would go in-home, and I would do parenting classes, anger management, and then we would teach on drugs and alcohol.
And kind of position them to be ready to receive their children again.
The transition, for reunification.
That must have been emotional.
It was so emotional because teaching them, I'm very confident.
Without degrading them.
Exactly. And there's so many mistakes that I made as a mother, and I can't go back. And I can't fix that. And you cannot reparent adult children. And I struggle with that with my boys now, because I have 4 boys, and they're all grown. They all have children of their own. And when I'm teaching on recovery, when I'm teaching on addiction, I'm very confident in that. I'm very confident in, teaching in anger management, because these are things that I've not mastered, but I'm mastering. I'm learning how to control all of that and how to work through it and how to cope with it. But when I come to teaching parents how to be better parents, I sort of felt like hypocritical a little bit, because I knew that I wasn't the best parent. But learning everything that I learned, I knew how important it was that they understood what they were doing and how it's going to affect their children.
But I think they're going to receive that guidance from you better than somebody that's never lost a child or someone that's never been through it. Because sometimes when you come at someone a certain way, they're going to see it in your eyes if you're judging and you don't truly love them.
Yeah.
But if they see that you truly love them, you're not judging them, and you really are truly like trying to help them, I think they're going to be more likely to receive that and not just fake a transformation, but truly transform.
I have seen mothers transform. I worked with several couples, and a mother, one in particular. She was so broken, and she was so hopeless and so helpless, and she was just like, I can't do this, and I encouraged her. I shared scripture with her. I prayed with her. I met with her weekly, and I kept telling her, we can do this. I'm here with you. I'm going to get down there with you, and we're gonna climb these ladders together. And we did, and step by step, it took her almost a year, but she got custody back of her daughter, and she gave birth to another little boy, and she's back with her husband, and they're doing amazing. And she's reached out to me several times thanking me for giving her hope. And I tell my clients, you may not have hope, but I have a lot of hope, and here you can borrow my hope. You don't have to pay it back, just pay it forward.
And that's what is just so beautiful about these stories, is a lot of folks, like, when they transform and they want to give back, like you, the Jessica Stanleys, like the Ashley Krauses out there here in East Tennessee, like, it just chokes me up. I'm like, this is beautiful. Like, and who would know better than the women and men that have been in the trenches, didn't think there was any hope, to go back, reach your arm into the trenches, because that's a big thing. When you're in the trenches, you feel like nobody cares, because you've usually burnt all your bridges. You've lost a lot of credibility. You're high risk to an employee. Landlords don't want to mess with you. I have got a lot of folks that I work with that are like living in, tents right now because of one mistake they made years ago, and they're still paying for it. And it's just really hard. So what was rock bottom? You did a couple dozen arrests, time in prison. Like when did you hit rock bottom, and when did things start? When did you finally like look up at Christ and be like, okay, I will be yours?
Every time I thought I hit rock bottom, there was always a trap door.
Oh man, I've been there.
So my rock bottom was like, oh, not yet. There's another one. So
it's like there Mario, you just keep dropping down.
There was a trap door at the bottom of every one of my rock bottoms when I thought it was rock bottom. I had to say that my turning point was I had gotten sepsis. My body went into septic shock, and from a dirty needle.
Okay.
Yeah. So in active addiction, like there wasn't one drug I didn't do. There wasn't one thing that didn't have me twisted.
So taking pills, drinking, smoking.
It all. Like I literally have done it all. There's not one drug out there on the market, legal or illegal, that I did not abuse.
Okay.
So I had gotten an infection called sepsis. My body went into septic shock. I could not control my heartbeat. My heart was racing so like crazy like. And my ex-husband had taken me to the hospital, dropped me off. And as I got to the hospital, they checked my vitals and everything. And they kind of looked at me and they were like, are you okay? And the last thing I remember is I just kind of fell out. So then I came back to, and I was on a gurney, and there was a nurse on top of me, and she was kind of like doing CPR. And then I lost consciousness again. And then I remember it took a long time for me to understand this and why it happened the way that it did. But now that I know what I know, it all makes sense to me. But I had an out-of-body experience.
Okay.
So I am hovering over this gurney. And then they bring in the crash cart, and they pick up the crash cart, and the lady, does what she does. And all of a sudden she says, clear. And then she puts him to my body, and my whole body just jumped up off the bed and then fell back on the bed. And then I'm watching the heart machine, it's just flatlined. And I'm yelling at myself, I'm yelling at my heart, start, and I'm like really freaking out in the moment. And then everything goes dark. And I'm thinking, oh no, like this is it, it's over. And I went to a place where I feel like God showed me was my eternal hell, what it would look like for me. I think our eternity hell is going to be individual. I think everybody's going to experience it in their own way. And for me, I was in the pits of hell in a straitjacket, locked up in a place that looked like a psychiatric unit for the criminally insane. And I had a big picture window. And outside of this window, all I could see was people being tortured. I saw friends and family members outside this big picture, and all I could see was fire and flames, and everybody was being tortured, but I was feeling it. I was feeling their pain. I was feeling it emotionally, physically, and I couldn't even reach my arms out. I was in a straitjacket, and I couldn't cope, and I kept trying to tell myself, breathe, use your coping skills, 4-square breathing, use your senses, and nothing worked. I cried out to God. I was like, okay, what's it gonna take? Give me one more chance. And and he did. And I woke up a few days later in ICU, and I spent months, weeks in ICU trying to recoup from that infection. I had endocarditis. I was so sick. The doctors told me that if I left, I would die.
Wow.
So I stayed in the hospital, and I let them pump me full of all these antibiotics. A lot of really weird things happened in the hospital. My grandmother passed away many, many, many years ago, and she would come to me while I was in the hospital, and she would tell me these things. God's got plans for you. And I'm like, I remember hitting my nurse's button, and I'd buzz the nurses, and I'd be like,
did an old woman come in here?
And I would ask them, I said, did you just see that redheaded lady just leave the room? And they're like, nobody's here. I was like, she was just here. I was like I thought that I was like literally losing my mind.
Yeah.
She kept coming to me, and I'd hit the nurse's button, and I'd yell out there, you need to get this lady to leave. And shoot,
Yeah.
I was so frustrated. They wouldn't let me take a shower. So I was ready to leave. I was like, you guys are crazy. I was kind of I was also dope sick going through all of that. They wouldn't give me any pain medicines.
Dope sick, can you explain what dope sick is, and what you go through, and why a person would want to leave the hospital even knowing they could die?
Being sick is the worst I don't even know what to
Dope
compare
sick
it
is
to.
like a withdrawal.
Yeah,
And
post-acute withdrawal syndrome.
it's like your mind thinks you're dying. And if you don't get more drugs, so you will literally, just like if you're drowning and you might grab someone and drown them by accident, but it's just a reaction.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dope sick. You're like, you will go and kill someone. You'll steal. You'll literally do anything you have to do to keep that drug in you.
It's just not the mind either. It's actually the body. You feel it physically.
So you know it. Okay, can you explain like what's going on in addiction?
So the body, your body starts to withdraw. Like your muscles cramp. You get nauseous. You start. So it's like having I don't even know what kind of sickness it would be compared to.
It's
like
just a whole nother.
It is like the worst feeling ever in the world. You can't relax. Nothing works. Everybody would say, "Oh, try taking a bath." That didn't work. Try taking a shower. That didn't work. Try this. Try that. Nothing worked. Nothing would take away that pain physically or emotionally, except for another shot.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So, rock bottom. You're in the hospital. You see hell. You get a second chance. And then what?
So when I got out of the hospital, I sold everything I owned. I packed what I could fit in my car. And I remember walking outside the hospital that morning. I looked up in the sky and I was like, okay, Lord, if you are the great I am that everyone says you are, I need you to show me. Because the life that I lived and the things that I've been through, if you were truly the God that my grandma says you were, then I wouldn't have went through what I went through. I didn't understand. I was angry at him. I was mad at him. So I was like, you need to show me. So I packed up everything I owned. I sold what I couldn't fit in my car, and I literally left New York State, and I went on a journey. I had no destination in sight. I just left, and I traveled, and it was so amazing because around every corner I went, God was there. I didn't have a lot of money when I left New York.
So what does it mean God is there?
He would send people. Like there were people that were being his hands and feet that were guiding me in slowly.
So it's like a believer would just appear when you absolutely
I'd be out of gas. I'd be out of gas on the side of the road with absolutely no money, and I'm just in my car crying, and I'm just like, okay, now what do I do? And some random person would come tap on my window and say, and I didn't know what these terms meant because this was a long time ago. So she'd say, I just felt led to come over here and talk to you. And I'm like looking at her like she's crazy. I'm like, you just felt what?
Yeah.
You felt led.
I remember before I was a believer and hearing that, I'd be like, ooh.
I know.
What does that spooky thing mean?
I know. I was just like, oh no. I thought it was like, I don't know, more witchcraft kind of stuff. I'm like, how are you led? So, I mean, and my grandmother used to always say to me, when you're lost, look for the lighthouse. So my grandmother was a big, big person on the lighthouse, looking for that bright light, that beam. So there, I'd be on the side of the road, no food. I had my dog with me, and he was hungry, I'm hungry, and I'd reach out to churches along the way, and there was always somebody there to help me. Always someone there said, stop by the church and we'll fill up your gas tank and we'll give you a bag of dog food and give you some snacks for the road.
So it was believers, it was churches, all along this journey. How long did that journey last?
The journey actually didn't stop until I really came to believe
a full surrender,
a full.
So you're like, okay, I know there's this Jesus guy, I know there's a God, but having a full surrender in a relationship, and then what happened? So
I left New York State when I got off parole in 2010. I left New York State 2011. And I literally just drove all across the United States. I mean, I went from state to state to state. I drove all the way to Washington. I was up and down the West Coast. I worked at a few farms along the way. As I got away from the drugs, at first I thought that there was a geographical cure. So I thought that if I left New York that I'd be healed. That'd be all better. So I left New York thinking...
That kind of reminds me of your childhood, though.
Yeah.
Always, we'll just go here and things will be better.
Yeah, nobody will know us. We can relocate and we can make up our own story and tell people only what we want people to know. So so I just drove. I just kept driving, and I kept driving, and every time I felt like I was at the end of the rope. I felt like that, that, okay, this is a dead end. There a why would appear in the road, and there would always be somebody to guide me which way to go. And it's been an amazing journey. So it started in 2011-ish, and that journey continued until 2017. Okay. It's still continuing.
So now, okay, you have a husband, you have a horse farm.
Yes.
You're helping at recovery centers and with. So what does life look like now? Like, what's going on?
Life is amazing. So I met my Boaz.
Yeah. Okay. So can you explain what a Boaz? Why Christian women to talk about? I'm praying for my Boaz.
Yes. So like when it comes to being, so the Bible is amazing, and I can relate. I can literally relate to every person's story in the Bible.
Yeah.
So Ruth in the Bible, there's the book of Ruth, and she was dedicated to her mother-in-law Naomi. And they traveled around, and so she worked in the fields, and she stayed faithful in the fields, and the man that owned the field was like her Boaz. So she found her helpmate. So in the Bible,
but during a journey, quite the journey. So she she loses her husband, and then she goes with Naomi back to Naomi's town where she grew up and where she's from. So in these times, to be a foreigner was not so Ruth would be considered a foreigner.
Yeah.
And she's pretty much just scraping wheat off the ground, whatever she can get. And this Boaz, she catches his attention, and he catches hers, and they do this look, and
and then so she ends up. Oh goodness, it's so amazing. So I found my helpmate, my soulmate, and
what is a helpmate?
A helpmate is somebody that God has specifically for you. Like, I believe that relationships, when we connect with that one divine relationship, when we connect with that one person that God has for us, that connection becomes almost invincible.
So kind of like you think about the Trinity, God, the Father, or the Son, the Holy Spirit. So it's almost like you're having that relationship with Christ. So you have him, you have the husband, the wife, and they're a triangle.
Yeah. Yep. And then God being the center of that. So I'm married, happily married. I've been married for this coming December will be 4 years. We own 25 acres. Well, not quite 25 acres. We have a 15-acre lot and then an 8-acre lot. We have 7 horses. We're trying to open up an equine assisted recovery program that provides sober living for those that are struggling. I'm trying to remove obstacles from people's lives so that they can live somewhere for a whole entire year without having to worry about an income or worry about a job or like removing those barriers and those obstacles so that they can't make excuses.
They can heal too.
And they can heal,
truly heal.
Yeah.
So this is pretty legit. You have a 501c3, which isn't something you just go file and you get overnight.
No,
it's a long process.
It takes a long, it was definitely a process. Horses are amazing.
How many do you have?
I've got 7. Well, 6 are mine, and then I've got one that's a boarder. Horses have a strong awareness, and they have an emotional temperament, and they're nonverbal, so they have the ability to connect with us on a level that we're not even aware of.
I met one of your horses when we did the Grinch thing.
Yeah.
And
secret.
What was she doing? She was doing something with
She was. I think maybe she might have sensed that you might have been a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
And so she was just kind of she was. It's okay.
Yeah, she was doing something really cute to me, and I was like, "Oh wow, hey!"
She was trying to groom you, nuzzling. So they take their nose and they wiggle their lip back and forth. So she was just kind of letting you know that she wants to be your friend.
That was really sweet of her, because I haven't spent a lot of time around horses, but when you're just standing right next to one, they're big, and you're just you think you're not scared, but I think there is a little bit when you're not used to being around them. You do, even if you try to hide it, sometimes you do have just a little bit of fear.
Yeah.
So, prison life. Just now, I mean, we kind of talked about kind of the heavy stuff. Not that prison isn't heavy, but like for somebody that's never watched a prison movie or someone that's never been incarcerated, like what's it like?
It's scary. It's so scary. I'm from a small town called Ithaca, New York, and let me back up a little bit. 2000, I think it was 1999 or 2000, somewhere around 2000. I was put on felony drug court. So because I had gotten my first felony, so they put me on felony drug court. I had to participate with all of the requirements of drug court. In New York, it's called drug court. Here, it's recovery court. I wish they would have called it recovery court. It might have been easier for me to handle.
Yeah.
But so it was felony drug court. I did about 8 months of felony drug court, and I was done. I was fed up with it. I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I got upset because I didn't get my way in court that day, and I left the court thinking, I'm gonna stop by U-Haul. I'm gonna rent a truck on a daily move, and then I'm gonna go home, pack up all my stuff, and I'm gonna just leave. I'm gonna leave New York State. So that's what I did. I rented a night. I paid.
And you're not allowed to leave the state at this time, right?
No, I'm on a felony.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks like you're a fugitive runaway.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I absconded.
Okay.
So I rented a U-Haul. I went down. I paid like $25.
And how many years in prison was the max if you were convicted of everything?
They could have sent. Well, the DA wanted me to do a 9 years flat. But my lawyer and everything else. My initial charge held up to a 10-year sentence. So I wasn't even thinking about the consequences. I just thought that I had just watched that movie, Catch Me If You Can.
Oh, no.
And I thought, yeah. Catch Me If You Can. Like, everything that he had done in that movie, those are the types of crimes that I had done. Yeah. I printed checks off of, I went and bought a printer, and I had like this magnetic ink, and I was able to print checks off of accounts that I would just randomly tap into. And I would, put on a suit and go and pretend to be whoever I was to cash these checks and do the things that I'd done. But anyways, I got mad at the judge. I got mad at my lawyer and that day, and I was like, I'm just going to go rent a U-Haul, and I'm going to leave state. So I went, and I paid $25 for a daily rental on a U-Haul truck. I went home. I packed up everything I owned. I sold what I couldn't again, and then I left New York State. I drove all the way down to Cocoa Beach, Florida. I stole the U-Haul truck. Oh. I was supposed to return it the next day. I had it for like a week. So I drove it all the way to Florida.
Just leave it somewhere?
Yeah. After we unloaded it, we just drove it to one of the local U-Haul places down in Melbourne, Florida, and just kind of left it there. But so I was in Florida, not long. We had a nice little apartment. It was me and three of my boys. I thought that we were like in the clear. I was like, I'll change. They won't never search me through NCIC because I didn't think that my felony was that big of a felony for them to search me. And I thought that if I had a Florida driver's license and if I had my plates registered to Florida, they wouldn't even think to look at me through New York and everything. But it didn't quite work out like I had planned. So I was able to get my plates switched over to Florida plates, but my license wasn't switched over to a Florida license. So I got pulled over for driving without a headlight, and the officer ran my plates, and it came back, everything was legit in Florida, and he looked at my license, and he says, why isn't your license, in Florida? I said, well, I just moved down here, and I'm just waiting on some documents so I can get everything transferred, and I'm sitting in the driver's seat thinking, oh gosh, don't run my name. Well, he was with a rookie, and the rookie says, well, we should run her through New York. I'm thinking, oh no.
Oh.
So they went back to busted. The vehicle. Yeah, I was busted. They went back to the vehicle and they ran my name and they came back out to the car, and at the time my last name was Brooks, and he says, Miss Brooks, can you step outside the car? And I'm like, yeah. So I step outside the car and he says, New York State has an extradition warrant for you. And I'm like, extradition? What does that mean? I tried to play stupid. He was like, well, they want you for some reason. I was like, I have no idea why they would want me. But if you just give me my license back, I'll call my lawyer and I'll get it all situated. Like, no, they have a detained extradition warrant, so we have to detain you. I'm
and
thinking,
you had your boys.
I had all my everything I owned was down there. I had my kids and everything was down there. He's like, we need to detain you and take you to the county jail. And I'm like, oh no. So they arrested me. They took me to Brevard County Jail. And while I was in the jail, everybody kept saying, if you fight extradition, they won't come get you. If you do this, they won't do that. So I was just kind of listening to all the jailhouse lawyers.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't guide me very, very nicely. So I kept trying to fight extradition, and I fought it for like 6 months or whatever. While all of that was happening, my sister was trying to, get my kids, and I wouldn't let her get my kids because I was for sure that I was going to get out of jail, that it wasn't going to happen.
And if you hear growling, that's not the devil coming in here. We've got a guest in the room, a little boxer over here, so just so you know.
He's protecting
yes.
us.
Somebody's walking by.
Yeah, so I was extradited. It literally took... I lost the extradition. New York sent the people to come and get me, and I was transferred from Cocoa Beach, Florida, back to Ithaca, New York, and that's what sentenced me to my prison sentence.
Okay.
But prison sucked. It was so scary. Going from a small county jail, I've only spent jail time in small county jails. I think one of the scariest jails in New York that I spent was Chemung County Jail, which was in a bigger city. That was kind of scary.
So, like, county jails, it's usually kind of like an open floor, double bunks. You eat breakfast at the same time. You trade things, maybe play cards.
Yeah.
Usually not...
Play spades.
Spades. Yeah. Usually not a lot of gang activity.
No.
Occasional fights, but
no. For me, it was kind of like just like sleeping and a little bit of a reunion, because that's like where
you see a lot of your old buddies, yeah.
All my old buddies were in there, so it was like, hey, how you doing, And sometimes, like, going back into those environments,
comfort.
It was comfort in a way, and it was also it sort of enhanced my skills on how to be a better criminal, on how not to get caught, and on how to do things differently.
I learned a lot about like drugs, because people were telling me their backstories, like, how they got addicted, and they told me about prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you learn a lot, because you're just like, how did you get here? Yeah. And there's usually some crazy backstory that ties back to usually a relationship. Either their parents led them into it, or they got wrapped up with a partner, and then things just spiraled.
Yeah. So I remember going so in New York, when I went upstate, I had to go to Bedford for reception, and Bedford is like it's the maximum security prison where all inmates come into Bedford. So you got Rikers Island, which is where New York City, all the 5 borough people come through. So when I was in reception, we were coming in on buses of people that have spent years on Rikers Island trying to fight a charge or fight fight a sentence or something like that. So I mean, it was scary. It was really scary, because I went from like being what I call a white collar crime, like a white collar criminal, into being in with criminals who have committed murder. Like right across from me, so I had a bunkie that was pretty decent. She was a pretty decent person. She sort of looked out for me and gave me advice on what to say, what not to say, and who to stay away from, and who to associate with and not to associate with. But right across the hall from me, there was a woman who was serving a lifetime sentence for putting her children in a huge container and then pouring cement on them while they were alive. So that's when the reality hit me, like, this is serious. Like being in with people and hearing their stories, and not knowing what drove her to that point. And then I didn't understand anything about trauma. I didn't understand anything about I had no knowledge of how mental health works and what it could do to somebody. Yeah. It was really, really scary. I seen some things in there that I would never, at the time, I would never admit that I had seen some things I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in there, and in prison, you really, you just have to look out for yourself and stay out of other people's way.
Yeah.
I witnessed some things in there, a lot of fights, a lot of people getting shanked.
Shake meaning?
Being stabbed. Mm-hmm. So they would take some kind of foreign object and they would kind of file it down until it was to a point, and then they would stab people. There's a lot of gang-related stuff going on in there. There was a lot of
rape.
There was
forced
rape, relationships. A lot of rape. A lot of even with the corrections officers, there was a lot of corrections officers that were involved in some really shady stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a lighter side, what was your favorite thing about prison?
So my favorite,
you're like, be quiet.
No. So I had to make it work. I realized this was my life, and I needed to find a way to make it work, because I didn't want to be miserable. I was far away from home. My sister at the time had gotten custody of my kids, and she had them all but my second son. He stayed with his father. But she had 3 of my boys. She was married. She was healthy. She was happy. She had a business. She couldn't have children at the time, so she took in my children, and she was really good to them. So I didn't have to worry about my kids. So I focused on getting through these next few days. So I looked forward to rec time. I looked forward to rec, being able to go out in the yard, being able to socialize with the other inmates and stuff. I looked forward to
because you were in a cell most of the day.
Well, it was like a dorm. So they call it the back buildings. So it was like a huge dorm with dividers. Like when you go in the bathroom, those dividers that are in like the public bathrooms and stuff. So there was like those kind of dividers, but they didn't go all the way to the wall. They just went to like the top of the bunk. So whoever had the top bunk, you could see them from the floor. But you walk in, and there's about 80 sets of bunk beds. So it held about 160 women in each dorm area. So we got to mingle through the dorm. Plus we had like a little lounge area.
Prison or not, imagining like 160 women in one room could be pretty dramatic. Just even if you have the most sane, good-hearted women, and you put trauma in there and all the demons that come in with other folks.
If people went there with their sanity, they definitely left there without it.
Yeah. You can become like institutionalized pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Just in order to survive and trade and standing up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Very quickly it can affect a person.
I looked forward to making coffee. So we didn't really, like, the prison coffee didn't have any caffeine in it, so we were able to order off the commissary. So but the coffee was a definite pleasure to have there. Coffee was good.
People fought over coffee.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes people I saw a fist fight go down over ramen noodle soups.
Yeah.
In jail they call them crackhead soup.
Yeah.
So people, they take ramen noodle soup, and they would make, they'd put Doritos in it, and they'd put like hot sauce and put all this fixing in it, and then they'd put it in the microwave and cook it, and it would almost like, it was good.
Yeah. Well, I know like, you'll hear girls say something like, oh, okay, when our commissary comes in, we're going to make a cake.
Yeah.
And you're like, where's the cake mix? Like, what's that mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like you're taking all these different things and layering it and trying to make something.
Yep.
Gourmet out of it.
Yeah. People definitely had a great, they had the skill when it come to cooking that kind of stuff. In prison, it's different because you can get packages shipped in, so there was more of a variety of the kinds of things that we could have in prison versus being in a county jail.
So rehabilitation, you've been on both sides of it. Like, you've been rehabilitated, you've helped rehabilitate other people. Like, what could you say to inspire people that are going through it?
Hope is amazing for me. Hope is hearing other people's experiences. I love to take acronyms. I love to take words that have huge meaning to me and make them mean more. So for me, hope is hearing other people's experiences and knowing that that people do make it out. People do make it to the other side. And if you can latch onto somebody that's made it through that's went through the trenches and has been able to crawl out, let them come in and rescue you. Let them help you. Let them help lead you out of the pits.
Without Christ, do you think you could have done it?
Absolutely no.
Okay.
I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for what Christ has done in me and through me. So the Holy Spirit is my accountability partner. Like, I still have thoughts. I still have thoughts like, I want to go do this. And I can hear God say, no, not today. We're not going over there because we got to work over here. There's just so much more work that needs to be done. There's just so much. There's just so much more.
So probably one of the last topics, the vision for your horse farm. So it's 20, 30 acres. You've got the stables. You've already got the horse.
Yeah, we're building. So we have an 80 foot by 120 foot covered riding arena going up, and we're building 12 stalls. My vision. This vision didn't come to me on my own. When I first had this vision, I was still traveling across the United States. I was having dreams of one day meeting my helpmate.
Boaz.
Yeah. My one day meeting this person, and this person being, God was revealing to me then where he was leading me. So I started writing in my journal about these dreams I was having. So, I wasn't even a year sober at that time. And I started seeing recovery. I started seeing hope. I started being inspired by having a recovery camp, having a place where people could come and heal, where they can stay. And
this is called?
It's called Divine Mirrors. And
it's a registered 501c3.
It's a registered 501c3. We have a website. It's divinemirrors.tn.com. It's so amazing what God has done.
So you're wanting to put like a well and run power back and do maybe some like small housing.
We're wanting to do tiny homes. We keep running against the opposition when it comes to Roane County and the requirements, the zoning and restrictions on the land. By the grace of God and God only were we able to be rezoned for certain hours of the day. So between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. we're zoned as commercial. So that we can do some kind of therapy.
So they can come in, ride horses, and with all the credentials and the courses and certifications you have, you can also help them heal from trauma with the horses. Cool.
So we want to start like a little village. We want to be able to put up tiny homes if we can get Roane County to allow us to do this. It's not going to stop this from happening. Because if it doesn't happen in Roane County, it's going to happen on either Loudoun County.
And does Roane County have any rehab or?
Roane County has nothing.
And we're ranked 7th in the nation for overdose, I think.
We're up there. We're really high up there. And Roane County keeps sending them to other counties, making them other people's issues. Yeah. They don't want to open up something. It's not that they don't want to. There are several that do.
There are
several that
There's
do.
There's just so much pushback.
There's a lot of pushback.
I think it's fear that like.
Fear is a liar.
Amen. But it's just like a lot of people are like, well, I don't have anyone in my family that is going through addiction, and I think actually almost all of us do have someone in our family that's going through addiction. Yeah.
When we went for our variance to get our property rezoned, we had all of our neighbors come up there, and like, we get along with our neighbors, and my neighbors know who I am, and they know what I'm trying to do, and they're like, oh, I think what you're doing is great, I think that you could help so many, I think that you could do this, I think you could do that. So when we went for the variance to get rezoned, my neighbors came there, and they opposed it, which I was a little shocked. I was a little shocked because they were against it, and they were talking about how they don't want these people in their backyard.
But they already are in their backyard.
Yes.
And they're not being treated. That's what people don't realize. Like, when you push back on a rehab or something, you're like, well, I don't want it near me. It probably already is near you. Yeah. They're just an active addiction, and they're hiding it.
Yeah. So on my road, I live on Paint Rock Valley Road in Philadelphia, and I know that if you go past, you have to pass my place to get to 2 drug dealers that live down the road from me. So if I can start a recovery facility there, and if I can put signs up saying that,
And they might scram.
they might stop in. They might come to
There
my
you go.
house.
Hey, that's even better.
That's what I'm trying. I would
Amen.
I want
Yes.
to draw them in. You know, it's like if I put signs up there is hope, there is recovery. You know, like. Stop, you know, I would rather them come to my house to find hope and recovery than to go to the dope dealer's house down the road and find it. Yeah, so all of my neighbors were opposed to it. Like, everybody got up there and spoke against it. So when it come to the voting, I thought, oh my goodness, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. We must have had about 40 or 50 people in the courtroom that night. And when they started talking about what it looked like, how to get it going, and how it was all going to happen. And so they went to the vote. So there was 5 people, and the first person said they voted against it. They were like, no. And the next person said yes. So then I put my head down, and I just put my head down. I'm sitting in the courtroom, and I'm hearing no, yes, no, yeah. So there was more yeses than nos, but it didn't click in my brain that they actually approved it until the guy says, well, we approved this to be rezoned. And I looked at my husband. I said, "Did he say
yes?
Did he say yes?" And he said yes. And I jumped up in the crowded courtroom, and I was like, "Thank you, Jesus!" And I was like giving him all the glory. I was like, "Yes, praising you through the storm." And then I looked around and noticed everybody was staring at me, and they were not happy.
Wow.
I grabbed my books. I grabbed everything I needed, and I told my husband. We drove separately that night. I was like, "I'll see you at home. I'm about to get out of here."
Deuces.
See ya. Yeah, but they were not happy that passed.
How much financial donations would you need to get to that next phase where people are, you know,
we would need
zoning, obviously,
yeah.
but I mean, like the couple homes.
We may have to critique it. It may not be the village. It may not be tiny homes, but we can. So we have a 2,800 square foot house. We can use our house that we reside in right now as a halfway house, like sober living, and then we can build a smaller cabin on the backside. So it may not be the village, it may not be the tiny homes, but
you're working in that direction.
We're working in that direction. So like we have invested out of our own pockets. So to build the arena and to get the 503c and to get all of that in motion, we have probably invested, I want to say about $210,000 out of our pockets.
And land? Did that include land?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we owned the 15 acres. So we bought the 8 acres. So we took out a loan. My husband took it out of his 401k. Yeah. So we bought the land. We bought the steel for the arena. We bought we paid the contractors, and again we come up against opposition a lot. Yeah. Trying to get this done, and so we're slowly plugging along. We're gonna get there, Lord willing. It's not my vision; it's the vision that God put in me years ago. So I know that I know that I just have to be obedient and stay in the past, stay on the path. The path was well walked. Many have gone before me, and I'm not gonna fear. Fear is a false expectation appearing real.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
Oh. There's so much, and I want people to know that I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like to be broken. I know what it feels like to be hopeless and to feel helpless. I've walked many, many, many miles in the same shoes, and I want you to know that you are loved and that you are beautifully made, and that if you need help, please reach out, because there is help. It is here for you. You just have to reach up.
You want to lead a prayer in closure?
Yeah.
Closing prayer?
Want to hold your hands?
Yes.
Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you so much for this amazing time. Father, thank you for Laura. Thank you for this podcast. Thank you for the people that are listening, Lord. I just ask that you open their eyes and their ears. And I just pray that you bring us together, Father. I've been praying for a long time for you to show me my tribe. And you are bringing them in, Lord. You're gathering us up and you're bringing us in, Father. And I want to thank you so much for all that you've done for us and continue to use us, Lord. I pray that each day we empty ourselves out and that we allow you to fill us with your Holy Spirit and that we be led by the Spirit and not by the flesh. Father, be with us as we walk this journey. You have gone before us and you stand behind us, and you are a mighty God. And with you, we will not fear.
Amen.
In Jesus' name, thank you. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Bye.
That's a wrap. Wow.